Hello and welcome to Heart Yoga Radio. Doing another indoor recording today as it is a little bit drizzly outside. So today we're going to share with you the topic that we have been talking about for most of today and quite a lot of yesterday as well. The rather labyrinthine and complicated issue of this vaccine passport business. And the thing that really sparked up my brain with quite a bit of annoyance this morning was listening to a clip of an interview on Radio 5 Live Breakfast, which was on the 13th of December. Tory MP Marcus Fysh was being interviewed on his views about this subject, and we'll play that clip for you in a minute and then we'll just discuss what he said. But before we do that, I just want to talk about the interesting events in Parliament yesterday that Pete was just looking into that just before we came into the yoga room and pressed record. So what was it that you were looking at?
Well, yesterday the government had a vote in Parliament on their wish to implement what is called Plan B as a response to the very, very rapid spread throughout the country of a new COVID variant, which is known as omicron. We're getting our way through the Greek alphabet, and that's pretty near the end actually. It's about 2/3 of the way through the Greek alphabet. And this variant seems to be highly infective, more infective than Delta, and the number of infections are doubling every 2.5 days or every 3 days or something of that order. Massive spread. So there's movement on the part of the government, as we would expect, and their plan is to implement Plan B. Of course, this has to go through Parliament. And yesterday, the 14th of December, Parliament did vote on Plan B. I suppose I should say what's involved in Plan B, so you know what it is. But Plan B is the reintroduction of compulsory masks in most indoor public spaces except hospitality, and the introduction of what is called the COVID pass for large gatherings. How do they define a large gathering?
So it's nightclubs or settings where large crowds gather, and so the definition of large crowds being unseated indoor events of 500 people or more, or unseated outdoor events of 4,000 people or more, or any event of 10,000 people or more.
Yeah, and what is a COVID pass?
So a COVID pass, as they're calling it, is using the NHS app. So it's proof of vaccinations or proof of a negative lateral flow test.
Yeah. And that's all operated through the already extant NHS app that anybody can have on the phone who's a British citizen, basically, and has got an NHS number, yeah? This is how we keep our medical records for ourselves these days.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could have anything sort of paper-based, like if you didn't have a phone, but
no.
That hasn't been mentioned as far as I know.
So that's the situation. So yesterday there was a vote on that. It's politically interesting because 99 Tory MPs, we're expecting 80, but it's 99 Tory MPs seems to be I've heard 100 or 99, and
yeah, the number does vary slightly, doesn't it?
I think it depends who you ask, but I think 99 is probably correct.
It's like way more than an ever gone against Johnson before, put it that way.
It's the biggest rebellion in parliamentary history or something, I was told. I mean, you know, the biggest and the best. I mean, Johnson's the biggest and the best, you know.
World
and the most
beating.
It's a world-beating... A world-beating backbench rebellion of 99 Tory MPs who voted against their leader's desire to implement Plan B. 99 Tory MPs. Now, an interesting twist, and just to give the full picture, we should say this, that Keir Starmer went public and said because this was a health emergency, not a matter of party politics, that he would get the Labour Party to vote along with the government, which mostly they did. There were some Labour MPs who voted along with the 99 Tory rebels, amongst whom were Diane Abbott, Afsana Begum, Dawn Butler, Emma Lewell-Buck, Clive Lewis, Rebecca Long-Bailey. Bell Ribeiro Addy, Graham Stringer, and listed as an independent in Parliament, Jeremy Corbyn. These also voted with the rebellious Tories. They don't like, or I dare say there are various reasons for objecting to this Plan B.
Well, giving the Tories any more power over our lives is not desirable, really.
No, of course, and we've pointed out repeatedly that this isn't just a black and white issue about fucking liberty or authoritarianism. It isn't that. And we've noted repeatedly, and it's objectively the case, I would say, that this particular Tory government is moving gradually and consistently in an authoritarian direction, more of which as we proceed with the talk. Now, before we play the interview with Marcus Fysh that Anna alluded to at the beginning on Radio 5 Live a couple of days ago, on the breakfast programme, in which Marcus Fysh was interviewed by Rachel Burden. Before we play that for you, I should point out that Marcus Fysh is obviously one of the ones who voted against his party and his leader, one of the 99. But he was announcing his intention a good 2 days prior to the vote being taken. That's kind of significant, I think. So you can see that there's a play going on, there's a political move going on. Johnson's already in the doghouse over
parties and
Curtain Gate, Partygate.
Oh, yeah.
And, the fact that the bloke's incapable of uttering anything unless it's a complete lie, etc., etc., etc. So he's already in the doghouse. And so there's political moves behind this. You can piece it together for yourself, but obviously there's restlessness within the Tory party. Okay, shall we now play the interview, and then we can go through it.
The vast majority of people who are vaccinated feel that their freedoms are being impinged by others who are able to walk around and potentially be infectious and not have to demonstrate that they're not. So if you're talking about freedoms and liberties, it's the liberty to go into a pub and know that the chances of not being infected are greatly diminished because either you've shown your vaccine certification or you've shown proof of a negative LFT. What is the problem?
We live in a free society in this country, and what you've just said is exactly what we must fight against. This idea that there should be
freedom not to be infected. What about that freedom?
A papers, please society is an authoritarian state that we should all absolutely resist.
But I'll say it again. Just can you answer this for me? What about the freedom not to be infected?
Look, we are very well vaccinated in this country. It's been a great success. People have the freedom to do what they want with their own bodies and the freedom of association. And if you want to undo those things, you're not worthy of working for the BBC, in my opinion.
Well, that's quite a personal statement to make. I suppose what I'm doing is putting across the case that many of our listeners have. They don't want to go into a pub or a restaurant, a lot of them, if they don't feel safe and secure. So if you're talking about the safety of...
Don't go then. You don't tell other people what they should do with their bodies. Sorry. Don't do it.
No, but the point I'm making is you're not telling someone what to do with their body other than to show they've taken a test. I don't...
Well, both of those things. You are segregating society based on an unacceptable thing. We are not a papers, please society. This is not Nazi Germany, okay?
No, I don't think it is, and I think there is a long, long way between what people are being asked to do and Nazi Germany. I don't think you can make a direct comparison.
It's the thin end of an authoritarian wedge, and that's why we will resist it.
But you are telling everyone to go and get a booster.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. But vaccine passports is a really, really dangerous step to take.
It's hard to listen to that without laughing, actually, because it's just so ridiculous. Oh dear me, what an idiot. Anyway, let's go through that and just point out the massive problems. I particularly like the fact that he's trying to present himself as this anti-authoritarian figure, and he says the most authoritarian sentence to the interviewer, where he basically says, well, I don't like the questions that you're asking me, therefore I think you should be sacked. Like a little veiled threat there. I mean, that's not authoritarian at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, it's, he's saying that to an employee of the state broadcaster, which is in many instances pretty compliant with the Tory government, you know, that controls the state at this juncture. And he's saying, well, you know, if you think a certain way, I don't think you should work for the BBC. And of course, he's a member of Parliament. He's a part of that government. So it was just, and the tone in which he uttered it, I'd say that it's actually a kind of a threat, you know. Yeah. It was a kind of a threat, or had a sort of threatening overtone to it at least. Then you can tell. I mean, just from that, the man has no insight into his condition.
Just another thing that really stood out for me there was this, you don't tell people what to do with their bodies. That's just absolutely, we would never do that. I mean, they've got all these drug laws which they've just ramped up.
Or they want to ramp up. They've signalled that they want to ramp up.
Yeah.
The war on drugs again,
The war on drugs, yet again. So they're doing everything possible to take away people's freedoms to do what they want with their bodies, aren't they?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't see him at the forefront of a campaign to legalise cannabis, do you?
No.
No.
But what I do see is that the police have been called into the Palace of Westminster, otherwise known as the Houses of Parliament, to scour it for traces of cocaine, which apparently you can kind of shovel up in copious quantities from the toilet seats, you know. All around the place.
And I just slightly off topic, but this was really funny when Johnson was, I think it was the first day of Crime Week. He was standing with his little police hat on, and with police all around him, looking all kind of tough on crime. And a sniffer dog was jumping all over him excitedly and snuffling at his pockets.
He probably got something.
I thought that was really, really funny. Johnson was probably thinking, oh, what a jolly friendly chappy this is. And the police all standing watching this thinking, wow, well, we know what that dog's actually saying.
He's got some of the devil's dandruff in his pocket. It's very interesting that the dog was very interested.
Anyway, so let's just unpack what our dear Marcus was saying there then. So the interviewer kicks off by really trying to ask about, well, what about the freedoms of people who don't want to be infected? What about their rights and freedoms?
It struck me as a very, very reasonable question, and there is a big sort of general and technical, as you like, question around freedom, the meaning of freedom, the meaning of liberty, the limits and the scope, the desirability, etc., how it plays off against equality, how it plays off against fraternity and solidarity, etc. There are a million difficult debates to be had around freedom. But it seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable question to ask about what about the freedom not to be infected. I mean, I'm surprised there that he didn't say, but you can get infected with the vaccine. You can be vaccinated, infected, and infect other people. And that's kind of true, and he could have brought it up. And I had a question mark over that, but it seems, and now I've been looking at an article in New Scientist of October the 23rd, which is pretty unequivocal there. It says people who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 are far less likely to infect others despite the arrival of Delta variant. Several studies show. The findings refute the idea, which has become common in some circles, that vaccines no longer do much to prevent the spread of coronavirus. And it certainly, up until Omicron, it was true. You know, 63% lower likelihood of infecting Delta, if you're infected with Delta but you're vaccinated, and a 73% lower chance of infecting with Alpha. Omicron, I don't know, to be honest. Yet, and I dare say that there will be some figures emerge on that. But it's going to be likely that vaccination is quite a useful measure against infectivity as well. Anyway, he didn't say that, but I thought I'd put that in there because there might be some people out there who belong to those circles that think that I mean, some people even think if you have the vaccine, you're more infectious, you know. Yeah, but there you go. So that's my first thing there. I mean, the thing about it is just the sheer hypocrisy, in my honest opinion, that this is a willingness to embrace contradiction, or at least the contradictions are lost on him. The latter wouldn't actually surprise me. I do believe that the Tory politicians do not have a functioning truth faculty in that very ordinary, normal sense, without getting philosophical. They are a kind of epistemologically challenged.
Do you think they haven't noticed that they're ushering in like dictatorship and fascism then?
Oh, they're like that, and they will say anything to get there.
Yeah, it's like stuff like this, in other words.
I say this because this man voted a few days prior for the policing bill, the so-called policing bill, which virtually criminalises protest in the UK. If that's not authoritarian, I don't know what is. This is a guy who voted for the Priti Patel's bill that means that the Home Secretary, at his or her whim, can revoke the British citizenship of somebody who happens to have dual citizenship. Just like that, without telling them, just over that, just by kind of fiat or edict. And if that's not authoritarian, I don't know what is. In fact, part of looking into this morning, I did look at the guy's voting record, and it's absolutely shitty. You know, he votes against raising benefits for disabled people. You know,
so no rights for them then.
No rights for them. You know, he votes for tightening up immigration law. It's every move to try and bring something progressive about, he votes against it. Even remotely progressive, he votes against it. It's deeply authoritarian, and this party has moved inexorably with the illegal prorogation of Parliament, the attempt to defang any kind of legal oversight of Parliament, which, you know, okay, there's a debate about that as well. You know, but I mean, it does amount to expecting parliamentarians and the government to obey the laws that it itself passes, right?
Yeah.
So there's something very, very fucking authoritarian about that. And if the Singapore-on-Thames agenda is what they're really up to, which we kind of suspect and have been talking about for a long time, then that would be perfect. I mean, Singapore is just really, really quite authoritarian. You know, workers do what they're told. They have to. You know, I mean, in this context, this Fysh guy, also voted against trade union rights. You know, any kind of move to increase trade union. Voted for contracting trade union rights. He's an authoritarian waller who subscribes to the neoliberal Buchanan style, Koch brothers style definition of freedom and liberty. For them, freedom means the freedom to exploit. For them, it's the freedom of billionaires not to get hassled by the government because there are 10 million people in the streets protesting for civil rights. This is what the Kochs did, and this is what Buchanan did all the ideological work for them for. You know? I mean, and the whole thrust of this way of thinking is against people, ordinary people, forming themselves into collectivity so that they can use their weight then to take action, to get social justice, to get more equality and so forth. So this guy's libertarianism, I think, is of a very, very special now liberal kind. And it does, you could accuse somebody of going along these lines of being either an hypocrite or somebody who just is oblivious to the obligation on us to try not to be too contradictory, even though...
Yeah, I know it seems that he is using the situation to try and paint himself in a really good light, because, I mean, obviously he's aware of his voting record. If anyone looks up, see how authoritarian he really is. But he's got this opportunity to be interviewed, to big himself up and shout about how liberty and freedom and incidentally vote for me next time.
Yeah. Now, on top of all that, I mean, we could actually kind of single out some contradictions within the text itself, rather than the contradiction within Fysh's voting record and the voting record of the other 99. We could go through them if we wanted to, But I think you're going to find exactly the same thing. That this is a very, very partial commitment to freedom, and a very, very partial sensitivity to contradiction. But even within the document itself, you've got these contradictions and incoherences. Firstly, refusing to answer. The freedom not to be infected. Well, his answer to that is, well, don't go.
Well, that doesn't sound very free, does it?
No.
Stay at home then.
Just don't. Just don't.
Have no life. There you go. That's your freedom.
Yeah.
Have no life.
And I'm surprised that Rachel Burden, who was the interviewer, who I thought was doing quite a good job on it there actually, but she should have turned around and said, well, right back at you. You could just easily flip that over. You could say to the people, you don't want to get vaccinated. Well, don't go then, couldn't you?
I know.
It's equally coherent.
I know. Yeah.
But this is the way he puts it. Everything's slightly evasive and doesn't quite answer the question. He says, we are not a papers, please country. Well,
that's a big fat lie for a start.
I think for a start, we are a papers, please country. You want to get if you want a bank account, or you want to change your bank, or you want to open a new bank account somewhere, or I don't know, or you want to get an account on a fucking crypto exchange,
or you want to get married,
or adopt a child. What you have to do, you have to go and produce your passport.
Or join the doctors.
Or your driving licence. You need a doctor. You have to go show your papers.
Yeah, or if you get pulled over, if you're driving, get pulled over by the police, what's the first thing they ask for? Your papers, your driver's licence.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a papers police society.
Yeah.
And if you, it's a point Aaron Bastani made about all this, and if you are a foreigner in this country and are trying to get British citizenship, the amount of paperwork that involves you get involved in then. It's a very, very papers police society. And I don't see this going away in the modern world. I think identity is going to become more and more of a matter. Given the electronic culture, which I don't see going away, short of full civilisational collapse. It's only going to expand.
Proof of ownership, for instance, has been something that's been around for a long time. If you have land or a house or something,
well, we have a land
that you could, because of passing it on to your descendants and things. So
yeah, I mean, you try and get probate. To do a will, or you have to identify yourself to inherit something. I mean, it's endless.
Yeah, I mean, I have a passport and I haven't been abroad in
for years.
20 years, but I have one and I've used it multiple times because I need it for my identity. I don't have a driver's licence. It's really my identity.
We use them as ID documents. I mean, just to aside a little bit here, the proper solution here would be that our identities are in our own control and they're secured by cryptographic immutable ledger, rather than being something that the government controls. But it's completely trustworthy. I don't say that this is going to go away. I can't say I like it. I mean, I don't like authoritarianism. I like authoritarianism less than this bloke. But this is the way he went with it. He says, the freedom, people have the freedom to do. We are not a papers police country. People have the freedom to do what they want with their own bodies and the freedom of association. This is a guy who voted against trade union recognition in if you look on his voting record. This is a guy who's voted against trade union recognition and trade unionism, which of course is freedom of association. And then, of course, he then did the thing of threatening the presenter there by saying, if you want to undo these things, you shouldn't be working for the BBC, in my opinion, in his ponderous tone, in his affected, ponderous tone.
I think he sounded a bit drunk to me, but that's just my opinion, Your Honour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that isn't true. We do tell other people what to do with their own bodies on occasions.
There's lots and lots of laws about what you can and can't do with your own body.
Yeah.
That the Tories...
Yeah, and there's lots of occasions in which the government can take over. If a mental health section can require you by law for no criminal reason whatsoever to be incarcerated, to be confined. They can require you by law to have a medical treatment with a dangerous psychoactive drug. They can require you that by law. So do you consent to take your Largactil? No, you're having your Largactil. We have the power to make you have the Largactil. Or whatever it is they use these days. I mean, maybe I'm 30 years out of date with my psychopharmacology there. But
let's move on to the Nazi thing.
Yeah. The way it transpired after that was Rachel Burden challenged Fysh by saying, well, the freedom not to be infected. And he comes out with this thing that we just spoke about. Don't go then. Just don't go to the nightclub. You don't tell other people what to do with their bodies. And then Rachel Burden says, well, it's only about taking a test. It's no kind of big deal. It isn't. In fact, it's a misnomer to call it a vaccine pass. It's a COVID pass. Because you're free not to be vaccinated, but if you're going to come in here, you've got to show that you're not infected.
But he disagrees even that, doesn't he?
Well, he disputed that.
That's invasive and something happening to your body as well.
Well... She kind of intimated there that isn't really very, very significant intervention on your body. And this is interesting technique that he used there. He changed the subject, or he moved the goalpost. And then he said, well, taking the test, amounts to a segregation society. And this is not Nazi Germany, okay? That's producing a segregation society. This is not Nazi Germany, okay? Notice this is a complete overdrawing of what's gone on there. Complete and absolute overdrawing. There is no equivalence whatsoever between what went down in Nazi Germany. And that something's going to mildly inconvenience maybe some people who want to go to a nightclub. That great essential matter, or a football match for that matter. Now, obviously, nightclubs very often have shareholders, employees, jobs, football games, billionaire owners, shareholders. Lots and lots of people work in the places. So there are issues, sure, and there is a conflict between the needs of the economy, the needs of business, the needs of shareholders, the needs of employees on the one hand, and public health measures on the others. They do pull in different directions. They do have to be balanced off against each other in some kind of sensible way. But to equate having a lateral flow test because you want to go to a nightclub when you could stay at home, as he recommends, if you wanted to, stay at home, use your free choice, stay at home, is somehow equivalent to Nazi Germany. I mean, a lot of people who lost relatives in World War II or their family was wiped out in extermination camps, are a bit pissed off with him for making light, actually, of that suffering. And
I'm trying to draw the similarities here. I mean, when the Nazis were destroying the people they deemed to be vermin or unworthy in some ways, the disabled people or the Jews, that wasn't a choice, was it? You can't choose not to be a Jew or not to be disabled, but the vaccine thing is a choice. You could be vaccinated tomorrow, and you could change what how the law would see you. So that's completely different because you can choose.
Yeah, you can choose the identity, whereas the whole Nazi thing is based on these ineluctable identities. Yeah, I mean, some of the ridiculous things that they used to do, just to show how overdrawn and stupidly hyperbolic this is that if you wanted to get married, you had to prove back so many generations that you weren't Jewish, or Roma, or whatever the proscribed categories were, or black, You know, you could only marry another Aryan, you know. Race laws, you could marry, but you had to marry another Aryan. And there was a whole bureaucracy that went and checked through all the birth certificates and stuff like that and tried to figure out whether you could legally marry. Now, that I would call it a Papers, Please society. You know. But societies do all sorts of stuff with our bodies. They conscript soldiers, and in my lifetime conscription was a thing that every young man went in the army whether they liked it or not when they were 18. And in some cases were then sent to go and get their bollocks shot off. Or come back in a box. And the Americans, you know, the home of the brave and the land of the free, they were doing that in my lifetime as well, with the Vietnam draft. You get told to go, you either go to jail or you go to Vietnam. Or you try and escape over the Canadian border. You know, in the home of the brave and the land of the fucking free. So it is bollocks. Now, I don't like it. I think society should exist. And government should exist, partly, to help us through collective effort to maximise our freedom. And that means maximising our leisure time, doesn't it? I mean, all this carping about freedom that some of these libertarians go on about, you know, like working class Tories who try and push this line. And what do? They go to work, and from 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock, they are the complete fucking slaves of the boss. And in some cases, they can't even go to the toilet for more than an allowed 2.5 minutes or whatever the fuck it is. You know, once you're in the Amazon warehouse, you're a virtual slave. Where's the freedom there? So I'm not trying to shill for fucking authoritarianism, but I'm trying to say that this guy talks with forked tongue about authoritarianism. And the Tories all do that. Johnson, all this appearance of the libertarian. He's a libertine, you know, with his 8, 9, 10, however many children, with however many women, you know, and his kind of party lifestyle, and hanging around with the Russian oligarchs in the castle at their orgies or whatever the fuck it is that he's supposed to get up to. Who knows? But, you know, he's this shambolic libertarian libertine on the one hand, but with this deeply desire for fucking overweening power, which has been pursued steadily in far more serious ways than this. This is actually a public health measure. It is a genuine public health measure. Can't say I like it, but what this bloke is saying about it is completely contradictory, and he himself is completely contradictory, if not hypocritical. And it is either hypocrisy or a complete obliviousness to the undesirability of overmuch contradiction in one's thinking, even though, of course, it's not completely possible to eliminate it. I concede that. But this is ridiculous.
It is completely ridiculous, but yet it's gained purchase, and the whole Nazi idea does seem to have rather swept through the minds of the susceptible. Yeah, I've seen this argument just around on Facebook and various social media. So you know it has gathered, and unfortunately, a bit of a momentum.
I mean, the sad thing about that is that it diverts attention from the places where the authoritarianism really is moving apace. And in a very, very dangerous manner. This isn't it. This is something on the periphery. Yeah. And it sucks all...
This is just a dangling bauble of distraction from from the authoritarian measures that they're really taking.
I mean, this fish has displayed, has voted for many authoritarian bills. I looked at his record. He has voted for many authoritarian bills.
Yeah. And he describes this as, the thin end of the wedge of the authoritarian dystopia. But
the wedge is here.
The wedge has arrived, and he has helped the wedge to be well and firmly lodged into the
rectum of the body politic.
Into the rectum, yeah. The wedge is already here, and he helped it as best as he could to get here.
Yeah.
So he's trying to describe our society as, we're free. This is the beginning of authoritarianism. Well, what we haven't noticed while we're all distracted with the
parties and all the rest
all the other stuff is that it's already here.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn's hat.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
or whatever the fuck.
Yeah,
They're-
I mean
they're-
that thing you describing to me this morning about when you saw George Monbiot talking about what the policing bill really means in terms of our
It's awful.
ability to protest in the future, and that
It's
really
awful.
is terrifying.
It means the police can keep lists of people who've been seen at protests, and that those people can be, without any trial or any evidence or anything, just accept the basis that they've seen at a protest, can be forbidden to go into any more protests, and even from discussing the issue that the protest is about on the internet, on social media. It's absolutely draconian. It is absolutely draconian. That is Nazi. This isn't. This is an attempt at public health. There are arguments both ways, I'm sure, but it's just not even in the same ballpark. But this guy alights on that, whilst himself actually, you know, if you investigate him a little bit, proving to be quite authoritarian, or a selective libertarian of the right wing kind.
Mm.
You know, you hear libertarian, you think these are people championing freedom and liberty, which they do, but only for some people. Mm. This is the nature of it. This is the nature of it. A deeply Tory society, a deeply capitalist society, cannot deliver freedom to most of the people. It cannot.
Well, it relies on people being virtual slaves to keep the capitalism machine going, doesn't it?
There you go, yeah. So it seems to me that maybe even like a clever ploy here. If you want to be really hermeneutics of suspicion, there's a clever ploy. Because there's an admission that there's this authoritarian trend in the government, but then it gets you looking in the wrong place for it, so that they then can carry on with it, carry on developing it, which they will do as long as they can get away with it.
Yeah,
but it's also, you can see, like something for internal consumption in the Tory party. The fact that he did this 2 days before the vote, right? You know, there's been some caucusing in the fucking tea rooms, you know, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Between you know, the people who are thinking, well, Johnson is now a liability. More and more people in the establishment, including the Tory party as the political wing of the establishment, finding Johnson a liability. And this manoeuvre by this Fysh is a manoeuvre in that game. I would say it's extremely unlikely that it wasn't, that he was just getting his knickers in a twist about freedom, because it doesn't stack up given the guy's voting record. And this is typical of the whole kind of complex of the way this particular Tory government operates.
I mean, it also occurs to me that the rebellion in Parliament, with so many MPs, Tory MPs voting against Johnson, was partly a kind of stick it to Johnson. Let's express our displeasure with him. But also,
they knew he wasn't going to lose because Labour had declared that they would back it up.
That's right. So they knew he was going to go through
Starmer
anyway.
give him a free pass to have a dig at Johnson.
Yeah.
Now you can decide strategically whether that's smart or not. We shall see. It'll pan out in interesting ways. This, I think. My prediction is we'll see a couple of things knock all this sideways into some very weird long grass and strangeness, and there'll be a twist on this, I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah, probably by the time we finish this podcast and we've got it uploaded, something massive will have happened that will make this all out of date, like it normally does. But anyway,
well, it's not
exactly out of date, but changes would have changed what we'd said if we'd done it a few hours later, wouldn't it?
Well, we're probably going to find by tomorrow that there's more we would like to add, but I think the substance of this is correct, because what we've focused on is trying to give a structural analysis, you know, of the way this outfit operates.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see that it'll be the same. If they're still in office in 2 years' time, it'll still basically be the same.
But it also occurs to me that as well as sticking it to Johnson and trying to present themselves as on the side of the people and the freedom and rights of the people, which they're clearly not. Another reason could be that the particular events which are going to need these passports for make a lot of money. and they are probably owned by their billionaire backers, you know, the people they're really working for, and they realise how incredibly pissed off the rich people would be if some of their events were lessened in their profitability because of these measures. So that's another thing that's in the back of my mind as a possibility for the reasons why things have happened the way they have. As to the reasons why the people in Labour who voted against this bill, they seem to be mainly people who are on the left, which is interesting.
Yeah. They're it's the socialist campaign group.
Yeah, I think... I can only imagine what their thinking is that the more control that they encourage or allow the Tories to have over us, the worse things are going to be, and perhaps it could be used against us in the future in ways that we don't expect yet. Maybe that's just what they was thinking, because, you know, the Tories are always going to do that. They ever see a tiny chink where they could get in there and grab what they want and fuck everyone else, they will.
I haven't actually heard any of these people speak about this. And I know there's a lot of left people really have got their knickers in the twist about a COVID pass, as much as this guy. You know, some people who, I would say, you know, socialist left, on sort of the Twitter left, quite a few of them take a similar line, you know, and seeing it as like an authoritarian. But I think they need to take a closer look and a more detailed look, and they might change. You know, I mean, I'm not sort of fully fully convinced, but I don't think it's the danger that this guy makes out, and. It might be that this group voted against Starmer's wishes just to get one over on the Tories, you know.
Stick it to Starmer.
I mean, it could have. Starmer could have used this to give him a defeat. But then, of course, he's alert to the fact that he would then be accused of playing politics with the health of the nation, and he's taken a decision on that. Now, whether it's a principled decision or a political strategic decision, who fucking knows? And he maybe, if he'd have dug his heels in, he could have got something for it. Maybe, who knows? It's very it's very, very tricky to try and tease all that out. But I don't think it detracts from what we've said about this guy as a paradigm case or an exemplar of the mentality and of the philosophy, inverted commas, and the tendencies and the deeper wishes of this bunch of right-wing politicians. That's kind of what I've got to say about that, really.
As to where we stand on the COVID pass idea, the kind of events that they have outlined here that are going to require the pass, I mean, I would see as unnecessary at this time. I mean, we've got an unseated indoor event of 500 people or more, or unseated outdoor events of 4,000 people or more, or any event of 10,000 people or more. Any events of that nature, I would consider not really. They're not life and death necessary right now. And I think if it was up to me, if I had to kind of say what I was going to do about that, I think I would cancel all of those events for at least a month, at least until we have better data about the Omicron variant, and I would fully compensate all the owners of these the venues and the staff, so that nobody lost out. But that's the big thing that the Tories don't want to do, for sure. But I would make sure nobody lost out, and there wasn't the least amount of inconvenience caused, and just give it at least a month just to see what happened and allow more time for people to get the booster, and then to review the situation from there.
Well, these lot have been very, very reluctant to do those kind of things. You remember they were quite late with the first lockdown. It was going to be the herd immunity. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, their bias is towards profits.
Yes.
And business. And then secondarily, as a secondary to that, towards jobs, because the profit makers need the workers to do the work, to earn to create the value for them to cream off some profit. And it's natural for them, given that their belief in capitalism, that they would err on that side. So, and they're late with everything, and no doubt could have done a lot better vis-a-vis the death toll and the disruption.
Oh, definitely.
And there would have been less disruption in the economy in the long run.
Yeah,
so
but see, they needed this to hide the devastation of Brexit, didn't they? I do find it tremendously annoying that COVID came at exactly the right time for the Tories, so that they could just carefully hide Brexit underneath COVID. So the disruption in the supply chain and the almost destruction of many businesses because of the incredible difficulties of sending their goods to the EU, which was really easy before Brexit, and the devastation to farming, fishing, and so many other industries, and industries that really rely on workers from Europe. Like the hospitality industry is just trashed to get people in just to come and work in hotels. Restaurants, even restaurants have a very, what I would consider really posh, with a very, very good reputation. They can't open for all their shifts because they just don't have enough workers to come in and do the necessary work. So it's this Brexit is massive problem, neatly tucked underneath the COVID problem. So if COVID runs and runs, I think it'd be great for the Tories actually. But anyway. And I'd just like to finish with this quote that I heard the other day. Unfortunately, I've watched so many things and read so many things, I can't remember where I got it from, but it's still a really, really excellent little sentence here. In a pandemic, one person's freedom is another person's death. So I hope everyone found our little ramble interesting there. Few things to think about, and I hope you're all doing okay. Stay safe, thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah. Make knowledge great again. Hope you're having a great multifactorial apocalypse.